The sound of muffled gasps echoed through the cracked door, shattering the illusion I had clung to for far too long. My heart pounded as I pushed the door open, confronted by the sight that would forever shatter my world. Dean, my husband, entangled with another woman on our marital bed. Avery. Dean's eyes widened in panic as he scrambled to cover his naked form. The disheveled woman beside him mirrored his horror, clutching the sheets to her chest. Nausea churned within me, a tsunami of emotions threatening to drown my senses. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of him, not anymore. "Who is she?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and anguish. Dean opened his mouth, but the woman beat him to it. I'm so sorry, I didn't know he was married." Her voice quivered with shame. I turned my gaze back to Dean, searching his face for any semblance of remorse or explanation. But all I found was a cold, calculated mask, a facade he had expertly maintained throughout our marriage. "How could you?" The words escaped my lips, laced with a pain that cut deeper than any physical wound. Dean's expression hardened, all traces of guilt evaporating. "This isn't what it looks like, Avery. You need to understand." "Understand what?" I spat, incredulous. "That you've been lying to me since the day we married? That our entire relationship has been a sham?" His eyes narrowed, and for a fleeting moment I caught a glimpse of the true Dean, the one who had been hiding behind his charming smile and empty promises. "You knew what you were getting into," he sneered. "I needed someone to take care of my mother, and you were convenient. Don't act so surprised." His words sliced through me like a dagger, leaving me reeling. Suddenly, everything made sense. The way he had distanced himself, the countless nights he claimed to be working late, the emotional void that had grown between us. I swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that threatened to betray my resolve. In that moment, a newfound strength surged within me, a determination to break free from the chains of this toxic marriage. "You're right, Dean," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I did know what I was getting into, but I also thought there was a chance for us to build something real, something based on love and trust. Clearly, I was wrong. I turned on my heel, pausing at the doorway. "Don't worry, I'll take care of your mother. It's the least I can do for the woman who deserves far better than a son like you." With those words, I walked away, leaving behind the shattered remnants of a life I had once believed in. But as the door closed behind me, I felt a weight lifted from my shoulders, the weight of a lie I had been living for far too long. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The illusion had crumbled, and it was time to face the harsh reality of my marriage. In the days that followed, I found solace in the company of the one person who needed me most, Meredith. Dean's mother had been the initial reason I accepted his proposal, but over time, she had become more than just a patient to me. Our bond transcended the confines of a caregiver's duty, blossoming into a genuine connection forged by the cruelty of her son's neglect. As I tended to Meredith, her moments of lucidity revealed glimpses into Dean's past that shook me to my core. The man I had once known was nothing but a facade, meticulously constructed to hide his true nature, a selfish, manipulative being who would stop at nothing to secure his own comfort. "He was always a difficult child," Meredith whispered one afternoon, her frail hand clutching mine with surprising strength, so consumed by his own desires, never thinking about the consequences of his actions. I listened intently, my heart aching for the woman who had endured the burden of raising such a callous son. "He's draining my accounts, you know," she continued, her eyes filled with a rare clarity. "Slowly but surely, he's taking everything I've worked so hard for." My blood boiled at the revelation, but before I could respond, Meredith fixed me with a determined gaze. "We have to stop him, Avery. He can't be allowed to get away with this." In that moment, a spark ignited within me, a fierce determination to protect Meredith and ensure that Dean faced the consequences of his actions. We began to devise a plan, a secret pact sealed by the bond we had forged through adversity. As the days turned into weeks, our scheme took shape. I used my medical expertise to gather evidence of Dean's neglect, meticulously documenting every instance of his absence and disregard for his mother's well-being. Meredith, in her moments of clarity, revealed the intricate details of the family's finances, exposing Dean's underhanded dealings and illegal siphoning of funds. "He thinks he's so clever," Meredith would say, a glint of triumph in her eyes. "But we'll show him. We'll make sure he gets what he deserves." And in those moments, I saw a strength in Meredith that I had never witnessed before, a resilience born from years of enduring her son's cruelty. It was a strength that fueled my own resolve, a fire that burned brighter with each passing day. As our plan solidified, I couldn't help but marvel at the irony of our situation. Dean had brought me into his life as a means to an end, a convenient caretaker to ease his burden. But in doing so, he had unwittingly forged a bond that would ultimately lead to his downfall. With Meredith by my side, I felt a sense of purpose I had never known before. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but one thing was certain: we would not rest until Dean faced the consequences of his actions, and karma had its say. Meredith's health had been deteriorating rapidly, her moments of lucidity becoming increasingly scarce. It pained me to witness her decline, but our shared determination burned brighter than ever before. One evening, as I tended to her, Dean barged into the room, his usual air of indifference replaced by an unsettling look of determination. "Mother, we need to talk," he announced, his tone leaving no room for argument. Meredith regarded him with a weary gaze, her once vibrant eyes dulled by the relentless progression of her condition. "What is it, Dean?" she asked, her voice frail yet laced with a hint of defiance. Dean shifted his gaze towards me, his lips curling into a condescending sneer. "Leave us, Avery. This is a family matter." I opened my mouth to protest, but Meredith beat me to it. "Avery stays," she insisted, her grip tightening around my hand. "Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of her." Dean's nostrils flared, but he seemed to recognize the futility of arguing with his ailing mother. "Very well," he conceded through gritted teeth. "I think it's time we discussed your living arrangements." A chill ran down my spine as the implication of his words sank in. Meredith must have sensed it too, for her expression hardened, her frailty momentarily overshadowed by a steely resolve. "What are you suggesting, Dean?" she demanded, her voice trembling with barely contained emotion. "I've found a wonderful nursing home," Dean began, his tone sickly sweet. "A place where you'll receive round-the-clock care without the burden of staying in this house." My heart pounded in my chest as the true nature of his plan became clear. He intended to strip Meredith of her dignity, her independence, and ultimately her assets. "You can't be serious," I blurted out before I could stop myself. "Meredith has made it abundantly clear that she wants to remain in her home, surrounded by her familiar belongings." Dean shot me a withering glare, his false veneer of concern slipping to reveal the cold, calculating man beneath. "This isn't your decision, Avery," he spat. "Meredith is my mother, and I'll do what's best for her." Meredith's grip tightened around my hand, and I could feel her trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. In that moment, our unspoken pact solidified. We would not let Dean strip away her autonomy without a fight. "I'm not going anywhere," Meredith declared, her voice resonating with a strength I had seldom witnessed. "This is my home, and you have no right to take it away from me." Dean's face contorted with rage, his carefully constructed facade crumbling before our eyes. "You ungrateful old woman," he snarled, taking a menacing step forward. Without hesitation, I placed myself between him and Meredith, my body shielding her from his wrath. "That's enough, Dean," I warned, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "You've made your intentions clear, and we won't stand for it." A tense silence hung in the air, the weight of our shared defiance palpable. Dean's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched with barely restrained anger, but in that moment I knew we had struck a blow, a crack in his armor that would ultimately lead to his undoing. As he stormed out of the room, I turned to Meredith, our eyes locking in a silent vow. The stakes had been raised, and there was no turning back. We would see this through to the bitter end, no matter the cost. In the wake of Dean's outburst, a newfound sense of urgency propelled our plan forward. We both knew that his threats were not to be taken lightly, and time was of the essence if we were to secure Meredith's well-being and expose his true nature. I channeled my energy into gathering every shred of evidence that could be used against him. With meticulous care, I documented each instance of neglect, every missed appointment, and every callous remark that had fallen from his lips. Meredith, in her moments of clarity, provided invaluable insights into the family's financial records, revealing the breadcrumbs of Dean's deceit. "He thinks he's being so clever," she would say, her eyes alight with determination. "But we'll show him. We'll make sure everyone knows the truth." As our cache of evidence grew, I found myself seeking the counsel of an old friend from nursing school, Julia, a woman whose unwavering moral compass and sharp legal mind had always been a source of inspiration. "Avery, what you're describing is nothing short of elder abuse and financial exploitation," Julia said, her brow furrowed as she pored over the meticulously compiled documents. "With the right legal representation, we can build an airtight case against him." Her words fueled my determination, and together we began laying the groundwork for a legal battle that would shake the foundations of Dean's carefully constructed facade. Throughout this process, I couldn't help but marvel at Meredith's resilience. Despite her failing health, she remained steadfast in her resolve, her moments of lucidity becoming beacons of hope that guided our efforts. "He's always underestimated me," she confided one evening, her frail hand clasping mine with surprising strength. "But this time, he's gone too far." In those moments, I saw the unwavering bond that had formed between us, a bond forged by shared adversity and a thirst for justice. It was a bond that transcended the boundaries of blood and law, and it was this bond that would ultimately be Dean's undoing. With each passing day, our arsenal grew stronger, bolstered by the unwavering support of Julia and the indomitable spirit of Meredith. Dean, in his arrogance, remained oblivious to our machinations, secure in his belief that he held all the cards. Little did he know that the tables were turning, and the very woman he had sought to exploit, the woman he had dismissed as a mere caretaker, would be the one to unravel the web of lies he had so carefully woven. As the pieces fell into place, a sense of anticipation bubbled within me. The road ahead was fraught with challenges, but I knew that with Meredith by my side and the weight of evidence on our side, we would emerge victorious. Dean's reign of cruelty and deceit was drawing to a close, and soon the scales of justice would tip in our favor, delivering the comeuppance he so richly deserved. The tension in the air was palpable as the day of reckoning drew near. Meredith's health had taken a turn for the worse, her moments of lucidity becoming increasingly fleeting. It was a brutal reminder of the urgency that fueled our mission. "We can't wait any longer," Julia said. Her voice hushed as she pored over the meticulously compiled evidence. "If we don't act soon, Dean might succeed in his plan to commit Meredith to that nursing home." Her words sent a chill down my spine, solidifying my resolve. We had come too far to let Dean's cruelty triumph. With careful planning and precision, we orchestrated our escape, a final act of defiance against Dean's machinations. Under the guise of a medical emergency, I arranged for a discreet transport to whisk Meredith away to a secure location far from Dean's reach. The night before our departure, I sat by Meredith's bedside, her frail hand clasped in mine. Her eyes, though dulled by the relentless progression of her condition, shone with a fierce determination that belied her fragile state. "We're almost there, Meredith," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "Soon you'll be safe, and Dean will face the consequences of his actions." A faint smile tugged at the corners of her lips, her grip tightening ever so slightly around my fingers. "I know, my dear," she rasped, "and when this is all over, we'll finally be free." Her words resonated deep within me, echoing the shared yearning for a future untainted by Dean's cruelty. It was a future that had once seemed like a distant dream, but now it was within our grasp. The following morning, I steeled myself for the final act. As the transport team arrived, I busied myself with the pretense of a medical emergency, meticulously staging the scene to sell our ruse. Dean burst into the room, his face contorted with a mixture of concern and annoyance. "What's going on?" he demanded, his gaze flickering between Meredith's still form and the flurry of activity around her. "Your mother's condition has taken a turn," I said, injecting just the right amount of urgency into my voice. "We need to get her to the hospital immediately." For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of genuine concern in Dean's eyes, but it was quickly overshadowed by his ever-present selfishness. "Fine, fine," he muttered, waving us off with a dismissive gesture. "Just make sure she's taken care of." Little did he know that those words would come back to haunt him. As the transport team whisked Meredith away, I couldn't help but steal one last glance at Dean, his oblivious form already retreating into the depths of the house. A sense of triumph coursed through my veins, tempered by the knowledge that the true battle was yet to come. With Meredith safely ensconced in our secure location, I turned my attention to the final piece of our plan, a meticulously crafted letter detailing Dean's transgressions in explicit detail. Copies were dispatched to key relatives and authorities, setting the stage for the reckoning that was to come. As I sealed the last envelope, a sense of finality washed over me. The die had been cast, and there was no turning back. But for the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope, a belief that justice would prevail, and karma would finally catch up to Dean. The calm before the storm had passed, and now the true battle was about to begin. The days following our escape were a whirlwind of activity, as the wheels of justice began to turn. Relatives and authorities, alerted by our meticulously crafted letters, descended upon the situation with a sense of urgency. It was only a matter of time before Dean realized that his carefully constructed world was crumbling around him. True to form, he showed up at our secure location unannounced, his face twisted into a mask of rage. I had been expecting his arrival, and yet the sight of him still sent a chill down my spine. "Where is she?" he snarled, his eyes wild with fury. "Where have you taken my mother?" I met his gaze with a steely resolve, refusing to cower in the face of his wrath. "Meredith is safe," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "Safe from you and your selfish schemes." Dean's nostrils flared, and for a moment I thought he might lunge at me. But then a sickening smirk spread across his face, and he let out a humorless chuckle. "You think you've won, don't you?" he sneered. "You and that doddering old fool plotting against me like some twisted fantasy." I fought back the urge to strike him, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "It's over, Dean," I said through gritted teeth. "We know everything, the financial exploitation, the neglect, the lies. You've lost." His eyes narrowed and he took a menacing step forward. "You'll never prove anything," he spat. "Without my mother's testimony, you have nothing." In that moment, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "I wouldn't be so sure about that, son." Meredith, frail but resolute, emerged from the shadows, her eyes burning with a fierce determination that belied her fragile state. Dean's jaw dropped, his composure crumbling as he took in the sight of his mother, defiant and unwavering in her support of me. "Mother, what are you doing?" he stammered, his arrogance giving way to a flicker of uncertainty. Meredith met his gaze head-on, her voice steady and unwavering. "I'm doing what I should have done years ago, Dean," she said. "I'm putting an end to your cruelty and deceit." Before Dean could respond, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air, signaling the arrival of the authorities. Julia had been true to her word, coordinating a swift and decisive response to our call for justice. Dean's eyes darted around in panic, his carefully cultivated facade crumbling before our eyes. "This is insane," he muttered, his words laced with desperation. "You'll all pay for this." But his threats rang hollow, as the officers burst through the door, their stern expressions leaving no room for negotiation. As they read him his rights and placed him under arrest, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication wash over me. The man who had so callously manipulated and exploited us was finally facing the consequences of his actions. Meredith's hand found mine, her grip surprisingly strong despite her frailty. "It's over," she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "We did it." In that moment, the weight of our shared struggle lifted, replaced by a profound sense of relief and triumph. The road ahead was still fraught with challenges, but for the first time in years I felt a glimmer of hope, a belief that justice would prevail and karma would have its say. As Dean was led away in handcuffs, his defiant glare burned into my memory, a stark reminder of the battles yet to come. But I knew, with Meredith by my side, we would face those battles head-on, armed with the strength of our bond and the conviction that righteousness would triumph over cruelty. The confrontation had been won, but the war was just beginning. The days leading up to the trial were a whirlwind of activity as our legal team worked tirelessly to assemble the damning evidence against Dean. The weight of his crimes was staggering. Financial exploitation, elder abuse, and a litany of other offenses that painted a picture of a man consumed by greed and selfishness. As I sat in the courtroom, surrounded by the solemn faces of the jury, I couldn't help but steal a glance at Dean. His once confident demeanor had been replaced by a sullen, hollow expression, a far cry from the arrogant man who had so brazenly exploited his own mother. Meredith, her strength bolstered by the unwavering support of our legal team, took the stand with a grace and determination that belied her frailty. As she recounted the years of neglect and manipulation at the hands of her son, her voice rang out with a clarity that seemed to pierce the very soul of the courtroom. "He was always a difficult child," she said, her gaze unwavering as she locked eyes with Dean. "But I never imagined he would stoop so low as to exploit his own mother's illness for personal gain." Dean's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing into a defiant glare. But Meredith remained steadfast, her words carrying the weight of a lifetime of pain and disappointment. "I trusted him," she continued, her voice thick with emotion. "I trusted him to care for me, to honor the sacrifices I made as a mother. But instead, he saw me as a means to an end, a source of wealth and convenience to be exploited." The courtroom fell into a hushed silence, the gravity of Meredith's testimony hanging heavily in the air. Even Dean seemed momentarily subdued, his usual bravado faltering in the face of his mother's searing indictment. As the trial progressed, the weight of the evidence against Dean became insurmountable. Financial records, witness testimonies, and a mountain of documentation painted a damning portrait of a man driven by greed and manipulation. Throughout it all, Dean maintained a veneer of defiance, lashing out at the prosecution and attempting to discredit the testimony against him. But his efforts were futile, his desperate attempts to cling to control only serving to further underscore the depth of his depravity. In the end, the verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. As the judge handed down Dean's sentence, a hush fell over the courtroom. For years he had operated under the delusion that his actions would go unchecked, that he could exploit and manipulate without consequence. But in that moment, the reality of his crimes came crashing down upon him, his facade of entitlement and arrogance stripped away to reveal the pathetic, desperate man beneath. As the bailiffs led him away, his eyes met mine for a fleeting moment, and in that instant, I saw a glimmer of something I had never witnessed before. Fear. Fear of the consequences he had brought upon himself, fear of the reckoning that had finally caught up to him. It was a fear born not only of the legal repercussions, but of the knowledge that his own mother had been the one to deliver the final blow, shattering the illusion of control he had so desperately clung to. In the aftermath of the trial, Meredith and I found solace in the knowledge that justice had been served. The weight of Dean's cruelty had been lifted, and a newfound sense of freedom washed over us. As we embraced, tears of relief streaming down our faces, I couldn't help but marvel at the strength of the bond we had forged, a bond that had withstood the tempest of Dean's manipulation and emerged victorious. "We did it," Meredith whispered, her eyes shining with a clarity I had seldom witnessed. "We showed him that karma always wins in the end." In that moment, I understood the true power of our shared journey, a journey that had transcended the boundaries of family and circumstance, forging an unbreakable bond rooted in love, resilience, and an unwavering belief in the triumph of justice over cruelty. As we looked ahead to the future, unburdened by the specter of Dean's malice, I knew that our bond would endure. A testament to the indomitable spirit that had carried us through the darkest of times, and a beacon of hope for all those who dared to stand against the forces of greed and exploitation. Karma had spoken, and in its wake a new chapter was about to begin. The aftermath of Dean's sentencing was a whirlwind of activity, as Meredith and I set about reclaiming the life that had been so cruelly disrupted by his greed and manipulation. With the legal proceedings behind us, we were finally free to forge a new path, unburdened by the weight of his cruelty. The first order of business was securing Meredith's well-being. Utilizing the assets that had been rightfully restored to her, we spared no expense in ensuring she received the highest quality of care. A team of dedicated professionals was assembled, and a state-of-the-art home health setup was established, complete with around-the-clock nursing and all the amenities necessary to provide Meredith with the comfort and dignity she deserved. As the weeks passed, I witnessed a remarkable transformation in Meredith. The cloud of fear and uncertainty that had once hung over her seemed to lift, replaced by a newfound sense of peace and contentment. Her moments of lucidity became more frequent, and in those precious instances, the true depth of her resilience shone through. "Look at us, Avery," she would say, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of joy and disbelief. "Who would have thought that we'd come out on the other side of this, stronger than ever?" Her words never failed to fill me with a sense of awe and admiration. This woman, who had endured the unimaginable betrayal of her own son, had emerged from the ashes of that trauma with a grace and fortitude that humbled me to my core. As for Dean, his name became a taboo subject in our household. The mere mention of him carried the weight of 1,000 wounds, a reminder of the pain and suffering he had inflicted upon us. In those rare moments when his specter loomed, Meredith would simply shake her head, a sad smile playing upon her lips. "He made his choices," she would say, her voice tinged with a hint of pity, "and now he has to live with the consequences." It was a sentiment that resonated deeply with me, a testament to the power of karmic justice and the indomitable strength of the human spirit. In the months that followed, our bond only grew stronger, forged in the fires of our shared struggle and tempered by the triumphs we had achieved together. We became more than just caretaker and patient. We were family, bound by a love and respect that transcended blood ties. As Meredith's health stabilized, we began to explore the world beyond the confines of her home, venturing out on small excursions that filled us both with a sense of wonder and freedom. Every outing was a celebration, a reminder of the precious moments we had fought so hard to reclaim. On one such outing, as we strolled through a beautiful park, Meredith paused, her gaze fixed on a family playing nearby. A wistful smile tugged at her lips, and she turned to me, her eyes shining with a depth of emotion that took my breath away. "This is what it's all about, Avery," she said softly. "These moments, these precious flashes of joy and love, that's what makes life worth living." In that instant, I understood the true weight of her words. Our journey had been fraught with pain and heartache, but it had also forged an unbreakable bond, a testament to the power of love and resilience in the face of adversity. As we continued our walk hand in hand, I couldn't help but a sense of profound gratitude wash over me. The road had been long and arduous, but we had emerged victorious, our spirits tempered by the fires of our shared struggle. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, united by a bond that could never be broken, a bond forged in the crucible of karma's reckoning and strengthened by the indomitable spirit that had carried us through the darkest of times. The future stretched out before us, a tapestry of endless possibilities, and as we looked ahead, I saw not just a new beginning, but a life filled with hope, love, and the unwavering belief that justice would always prevail over cruelty. For in the end, karma had spoken, and its voice would echo through the ages, a testament to the enduring power of righteousness and the indomitable strength of the human spirit. I stood there, drenched from head to toe, staring at the locked door of what used to be a symbol of our shared dreams. The storm outside mirrored the tempest in my heart, but it was nothing compared to the hurricane about to be unleashed. Gripping the doorknob, I inhaled deeply, bracing myself for the confrontation that had been brewing for far too long. "Ethan," my voice, sharper than I intended, cut through the pitter-patter of the rain as the door swung open, revealing my husband Ethan, looking as if he'd just seen a ghost. "We need to talk. Now." His gaze, once filled with warmth and love, now held a flicker of annoyance that quickly morphed into concern. "Kira, what's wrong? You're soaked." Ignoring the urge to break down, I steadied my voice, my eyes locked on his. "It's Lily," I said, the name of our daughter weighing heavily on my tongue. She's gone, Ethan." The color drained from his face, his body tensing as if preparing for a physical blow. "Gone? What do you mean? Gone? Kira, please." The pain in his eyes was real, but so was the anger and betrayal simmering inside me. "I mean, she's been in a terrible accident because you were too busy to care, because you've been too caught up in your own world to notice she needed you." Ethan staggered back as if I'd struck him, his hand reaching out for support against the doorframe. No, that can't be true. Kira, please, tell me this is a mistake." There was a part of me that wanted to take back the words, to soothe the agony etched across his face. But the larger part, the part fueled by months of frustration, anger, and heartache, needed him to feel the weight of his neglect. You should have been there, Ethan. For all the times you promised and failed to show, this is on you. His voice broke as he spoke. I need to see her. Please. The resolve in my heart wavered for a moment, seeing the man I once loved beyond measure crumble before me. But this was necessary, a shock to jolt him back to the reality from which he'd been absent far too long. She's at the hospital. They're doing everything they can, but you should have been the one doing everything for her long before this. Ethan moved past me, grabbing his keys and wallet in a haste, his actions filled with a panic I hadn't seen in years. I'll go now. I'll make it right, Kira. I swear. Watching him rush out into the storm, I felt a bitter mix of satisfaction and sorrow. This was the start of a long, arduous journey. A journey to make him understand the depth of his failures, not just as a husband, but as a father. The rain continued to pour, each drop a reminder of the tears shed in the silence of our crumbling home. As the sound of Ethan's car faded into the distance, I closed the door behind me, leaning against it for support. The house felt emptier than ever, a shell of the love and laughter it once held. But this was just the beginning. The beginning of a reckoning for Ethan's negligence and the first step towards reclaiming the life that we, especially Lily, deserved. The deception about Lily's condition was a desperate, calculated move, a lie born out of the necessity to awaken Ethan from his complacency. The real battle, however, lay ahead. It was a fight for justice, for accountability, and above all, for the restoration of a broken family torn apart by indifference and presumed infidelity. Tonight the storm raged on, both outside and within the walls of the Wilsons' home, heralding the tumultuous journey that lay ahead. The hospital's fluorescent lights felt harsh against my eyes as I paced the sterile hallway, waiting for news on Lily. The lie I told Ethan gnawed at me, but desperation had driven me to extremes. The sound of approaching footsteps pulled me from my thoughts, and I turned to see Ethan, his face a mask of worry and fear. "How is she? Can I see her?" he asked, breathless, from what I assumed was a combination of his rush here and the anxiety consuming him. I hesitated, the moment of truth looming large. "She's stable. They're running some tests. Ethan, there's something I need to tell you." His relief at my first words was palpable, but confusion quickly took its place. "What is it? What's wrong?" Taking a deep breath, I faced him squarely. "Lily isn't gone, Ethan. I lied because I didn't know how else to get through to you. You've been so distant, so absent. She needed you, and you weren't there." The transformation in Ethan was immediate. Relief gave way to anger, his eyes narrowing. "You lied about our daughter's life?" "Yes, I lied. Because nothing else seems to matter to you lately. Not me, not Lily, not the life we built together." My voice rose, tinged with anger and pain. Ethan stepped back as if my words were physical blows. "I can't believe you'd do this. How could you play with our emotions like that? How could you not see what's happening right in front of you?" I shot back, my frustration boiling over. "You're never here, Ethan, and even when you are, you're not really present. We might as well be ghosts." Our heated exchange was cut short by the nurse's arrival, her expression one of professional concern. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, Lily is asking for you." We followed her in silence, the tension between us thick. Seeing Lily, so small and vulnerable in her hospital bed, brought home the reality of our fractured family. Ethan's face softened as he approached her, guilt written all over his features. "Lily, I'm so sorry, sweetie. I should have been there for you," he murmured, taking her hand gently. Lily's response was a weak smile, her voice barely a whisper. "It's okay, Daddy. I just want us to be a family again." That night, after Lily fell asleep, Ethan and I sat in a cold, uncomfortable silence in the hospital cafeteria. The distance between us felt insurmountable, a chasm widened by neglect and hurtful truths. "Ethan, we can't go on like this. Something has to change," I said, breaking the silence. He looked away, his jaw clenched. "I don't know if I can forgive you for lying about something so serious. And I don't know if I can keep living with a ghost of a husband. Ethan, you've been avoiding us, staying out late, missing family dinners, forgetting Lily's events. Is there someone else?" Ethan's silence was answer enough. His avoidance, a deafening confirmation of my worst fears. "I see," I whispered, feeling a cold resolve settling in my heart. This was more than just neglect. It was betrayal. The ride home was silent, each lost in our own thoughts. As I lay in bed that night, the magnitude of Ethan's betrayal weighed heavily on me. The love that once bound us together had been eroded by lies and indifference. But as I listened to Ethan's shallow breathing, a plan began to form in my mind. A plan to expose the truth and seek justice for the pain he had caused. The road ahead was clear. Ethan's negligence and infidelity would not go unpunished. For Lily's sake, and for my own, I would fight to ensure that he faced the consequences of his actions. This was no longer just about saving our marriage. It was about reclaiming my life and protecting my daughter from further harm. The following weeks were a blur of hospital visits and silent dinners at home. Lily's recovery was the only silver lining in the thick cloud of tension that hung over our household. Ethan's attempts at conversation felt forced, and my responses were cold, our interactions nothing more than necessary exchanges for Lily's sake. One evening, as Ethan sat across from me at the dinner table, his phone buzzed incessantly, a symphony of pings and vibrations that he diligently ignored. Lily, now more perceptive than ever, picked up on the tension. "Daddy, aren't you going to answer that?" she asked, her fork paused midair. Ethan shot me a wary glance before replying, "It's nothing important, Lily, just work." But Lily's curiosity was piqued. "You work a lot, Daddy. You missed my school play and my soccer game last week." Ethan's face tightened, the lines of guilt etching deeper. "I know, sweetheart. I'm really sorry. I promise I'll make it up to you." But promises were cheap, especially those that had been broken too many times before. I watched them, my heart aching for Lily, who still held hope for her father's redemption. Later that night, as Ethan and I lay in bed, miles apart in the same room, I turned to face him. "Ethan, your phone was going off all through dinner. Is it really just work?" He sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of his secrets. "Kira, I'm trying to fix things. Can't we just leave it at that?" "No, we can't. Not when fixing things means neglecting your family. Who were you texting, Ethan?" His silence was a chasm, deep and wide, filled with unspoken truths. The next morning, I decided it was time to seek those truths myself. While Ethan was in the shower, his phone lay unattended on the kitchen counter. A quick glance confirmed my suspicions. Messages from a contact saved only as E filled the screen, their tone intimate and their content damning. Armed with this knowledge, I confronted Ethan. "Who is E?" I asked, holding his phone up as he walked into the kitchen. Ethan froze, the color draining from his face. "Kira, it's not what you think." "Isn't it? Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing." "How should I think about that, Ethan?" My voice was steady, but inside, I was crumbling. He reached for the phone, but I pulled it back. "Ethan, you've been lying to me, to us. How long has this been going on?" The confession, when it came, was a mere whisper. "A few months. I'm sorry, Kira, I never wanted to hurt you." "Hurt me?" The realization that Ethan's betrayal wasn't just emotional but physical felt like a physical blow. The foundation of our marriage, our family, had been shattered by his actions. "I want you to leave," I said, the words cold and final. Ethan's protest was weak. "Kira, please, I can explain." "There's nothing to explain. You've made your choice. Now it's time you live with it, away from Lily and me." The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Ethan moved out, and I focused on Lily, who was confused and hurt by the sudden change. But amidst the turmoil, a fierce determination grew within me. Ethan's negligence and betrayal had not only damaged our family, but had also ignited a resolve within me to protect Lily and ensure that Ethan faced the consequences of his actions. As I lay in bed each night, the silence of the house, a stark reminder of the gaping hole Ethan's departure had left, my thoughts turned to revenge. Not petty acts of spite, but a calculated plan to expose his deceit and ensure he could no longer harm us. For Lily's sake, and for my own, I was ready to fight. This was more than just a broken marriage. It was a battle for justice and a stand against betrayal. In the weeks that followed Ethan's departure, the void he left behind became a space for Lily and me to heal and bond over our shared pain. Yet, beneath the surface of our newfound routine, a storm was brewing, a storm of my own making, aimed squarely at Ethan. One afternoon, as Lily and I sat at the kitchen table working on her school project, the phone rang. The caller ID flashed Ethan's number, a sight that still made my heart skip, not out of love, but a cocktail of anger and anticipation. "Mom, it's Dad," Lily said, her voice a mix of hope and hesitation. I nodded, gesturing for her to answer. "Go ahead, sweetie. I'll be right here." Lily picked up the phone, her voice brightening as she spoke to Ethan. "Hi, Dad. Yeah, we're working on a project about the solar system. Mom's helping me." I listened, my emotions a whirlwind as Lily chatted animatedly, sharing details of her life from which Ethan had chosen to absent himself. After a few minutes, she handed me the phone, her eyes searching mine for any sign of what to expect. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself. "Ethan? Kira, how are you both doing?" His voice was tentative, laced with a guilt that did little to soothe the raw edges of my heart. "We're managing. What do you want, Ethan?" There was a pause, and then, "I want to see Lily. I miss her, Kira. I miss you both." The words, meant to tug at my heartstrings, only fueled my resolve. "Lily is doing fine. As for seeing her, you know the conditions. Your actions have consequences, Ethan." Ethan's frustration was palpable, even through the phone. "I'm her father, Kira. You can't just cut me out of her life because of a mistake." "A mistake?" The word tasted bitter in my mouth. "No, Ethan. What you did was not a mistake. It was a series of choices that you consciously made, choices that hurt your family. You need to understand the gravity of that." The conversation ended shortly after, with promises from Ethan to do better and pleas for a chance to prove himself. But words were cheap, and his track record spoke volumes. That evening, as I tucked Lily into bed, her question caught me off guard. "Mom, is Dad a bad person?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "No, sweetie. Your dad made some bad choices, but that doesn't necessarily make him a bad person. It's complicated." Lily nodded, her understanding limited by her tender age. "I miss him," she admitted, her voice small. "I know, baby, I know." I kissed her forehead, my heart heavy with the burden of our situation. The days turned into weeks, and as the storm outside mirrored the turmoil in our lives, I began to lay the groundwork for my plan. Ethan's negligence and betrayal would not go unchecked. I started documenting everything. His missed visits, the late-night calls, the text messages from E. Everything would serve as ammunition for the battle ahead. One particularly stormy night, as lightning illuminated the sky and thunder shook the windows, I sat at the kitchen table, poring over the evidence I had gathered. The weather outside seemed to echo the chaos Ethan had brought into our lives, a fitting backdrop for my preparations. The sound of the doorbell shattered the silence, pulling me from my thoughts. I checked the clock. Almost midnight. Who could it be at this hour? I approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole before opening it to find Ethan on the other side, soaked from the rain, his eyes desperate. "Kira, we need to talk. I can't live like this," he pleaded, his voice breaking. The sight of him, so vulnerable, might have once stirred sympathy in my heart, but those days were long gone. "You should have thought about that before, Ethan. You made your choice." Closing the door on his pleading figure, I turned back to the evidence spread out for me. Ethan's time of reckoning was approaching, and I would be the storm that swept him away. The morning after Ethan's late visit, I woke with a resolve stronger than ever. The sight of him, drenched and desperate, had not softened my heart, but had instead solidified my determination to see through the plan I had been meticulously crafting. Ethan needed to face the full consequences of his actions, not just for me, but for Lily, whose innocent questions about her father's love and absence haunted me. I sat Lily down after breakfast, a serious conversation brewing over the remains of our meal. "Lily, your dad and I are going through a difficult time, as you know. It's important that you understand, no matter what happens, we both love you very much." Lily nodded, her eyes wide and trusting. "I know, Mom, but why doesn't Dad come to see us anymore?" The simplicity of her question stung, a reminder of the complexity of adult failures to a child's heart. "Daddy made some mistakes, sweetheart. Right now, it's important for us to focus on being strong and happy together." As the day progressed, I took steps to initiate the next phase of my plan. I contacted a lawyer, detailing Ethan's neglect, his affair, and the impact of his actions on Lily and me. The lawyer listened, his voice calm and reassuring, promising to guide me through the process of holding Ethan accountable. That evening, Ethan called again, his voice a mixture of desperation and anger. "Kira, you're turning Lily against me. I have rights." "The only person turning Lily against you is you, Ethan. Your actions speak louder than any words could," I replied, my voice steady. "I want to see my daughter. I'll take this to court if I have to," he threatened, his voice gaining an edge. "If that's the route you choose, be prepared to face the consequences. I have documented everything, Ethan. Your neglect, your affair, everything. You think a court will look kindly on that?" There was silence on the other end, the weight of reality settling in. "Kira, please. There has to be another way." "The time for another way has long passed, Ethan. You made your choices. Now you live with them." After hanging up, I felt a surge of empowerment mixed with sorrow. This wasn't the life I had envisioned for us, but I was determined to emerge from this storm stronger, for Lily's sake. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal consultations and preparations. Ethan's sporadic attempts to contact us became more desperate, but I remained firm, bolstered by the support of my lawyer and the unwavering goal of securing a better future for Lily and me. One afternoon, as I collected mail from the mailbox, an envelope caught my eye. It was from Ethan. Hesitating for a moment, I opened it to find a letter and several photographs. Photos of us, happier times that now seemed like a distant memory. His letter spoke of regret, of a desire to turn back time and make different choices. But as I read his words, I couldn't help but feel it was too little, too late. That evening, as Lily and I sat on the couch, her head resting in my lap as we watched her favorite show, I realized the full extent of what I was fighting for. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. Justice for the pain Ethan had caused, for the neglect Lily had suffered, and for the betrayal that had shattered our family. As the days turned into weeks and the legal proceedings began to take shape, my resolve never wavered. Ethan had awakened a strength in me I never knew I had, a strength fueled by love for my daughter and a desire for justice. The storm that had once threatened to break me had instead forged a new path, one where I stood firm against the winds of betrayal and neglect, ready to fight for the future Lily and I deserved. The legal proceedings against Ethan unfolded with a cold, methodical precision that mirrored the detachment I had come to associate with our crumbling marriage. Each document, each piece of evidence, was a brick in the fortress I was building around Lily and me, a defense against the chaos Ethan had brought into our lives. One morning, as I prepared for another meeting with my lawyer, Lily approached me, her expression serious beyond her years. "Mom, will I have to choose between you and Dad?" Her question stopped me in my tracks. Kneeling down, I took her hands in mine. "No, sweetheart. This isn't about choosing sides. It's about making sure we're safe and happy. I'll do everything in my power to make sure you feel loved and protected, no matter what." Lily nodded, a semblance of relief washing over her face. "Okay, Mom, I trust you." The meeting with my lawyer that day was a turning point. Armed with the evidence of Ethan's neglect and infidelity, we outlined our strategy. But it was the private investigator's report that truly shifted the balance in our favor. Photos and detailed accounts of Ethan's affair, his frequent absences, and neglect of Lily painted a damning picture that no courtroom could ignore. "Ethan will have a hard time disputing these," my lawyer remarked, flipping through the report. "This strengthens your case significantly." As the court date approached, Ethan's attempts to reach out became more frantic. Voicemails and letters piled up, each one a desperate plea for reconciliation, for a second chance I knew we couldn't afford to give him. The day of the hearing was a maelstrom of emotions. Standing before the judge, I recounted the events that had led us here, each word a testament to the battle we'd been fighting in silence. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed diminished, his usual confidence replaced by a palpable sense of defeat. "Mrs. Wilson, your testimony and the evidence presented make a compelling case," the judge said, his voice grave. "Mr. Wilson, do you have anything to say in your defense?" Ethan's reply was a mix of apologies and excuses, a last-ditch effort to sway the judge's opinion. But the evidence was irrefutable, the impact of his actions on Lily and me undeniable. In the end, the judge's ruling was a vindication of everything we had endured. Full custody was granted to me, along with a stipulation for supervised visits for Ethan, should he seek them. The court also ordered Ethan to undergo counseling, recognizing the need for him to address the issues that had led to his neglectful behavior. As we left the courtroom, I felt Lily's hand slip into mine, her grip tight. "Is it over, Mom?" she asked, her voice hopeful yet tinged with uncertainty. I squeezed her hand, a promise in my grasp. "It's a new beginning, sweetie. We can start healing now." The victory in court was bittersweet. While it offered a legal resolution to our struggles, the emotional scars remained, a reminder of the cost of Ethan's betrayal. Yet as Lily and I walked out into the sunlight, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. The battle was over, but our journey of healing was just beginning. In the weeks that followed, Lily and I focused on rebuilding our lives. Therapy sessions, weekend outings, and quiet evenings at home became our new normal. Slowly, the laughter returned to our house, filling the spaces that grief and betrayal had once occupied. Ethan's attempts to reconnect became less frequent as he started his court-ordered counseling. I hoped, for Lily's sake, that he would find the help he needed to be a better father, even if from a distance. As for me, the fight had revealed a strength I never knew I possessed, a resilience forged in the fires of adversity. For Lily, for myself, I had stood up against the storm and emerged stronger. Our future was uncertain, but we faced it together, united by love and a bond that no betrayal could sever. The newfound peace in our home was palpable, a serene contrast to the storm that had raged before. Lily's laughter became the soundtrack of our lives, each day a step further away from the darkness that had once threatened to engulf us. But the final act of this drama was yet to unfold, a confrontation that would close the chapter on Ethan's betrayal once and for all. It was a crisp autumn morning when the call came. A number I didn't recognize flashed on my phone, but intuition urged me to answer. "Hello? Is this Kira Wilson?" The voice was unfamiliar, hesitant. "Yes, speaking. I think you need to know something about your husband, Ethan." The caller paused, as if weighing the impact of her next words. I was involved with him, but there's more you should know." The revelation wasn't a shock, but the call was a catalyst, setting in motion the final confrontation I had both dreaded and anticipated. We agreed to meet, and as I sat across from Ethan's mistress in a quiet corner of a local cafe, her story unfolded, a tale of lies and promises, similar to the one Ethan had woven around us. Armed with this new information, and with evidence that underscored Ethan's inability to change, I knew what had to be done. It wasn't just for me anymore, but for Lily, and for every promise Ethan had broken. Confronting Ethan wasn't a decision I made lightly. As I stood at his doorstep, Lily by my side, a mix of resolve and apprehension coursed through me. When he opened the door, his surprise at seeing us was evident, quickly replaced by a cautious wariness. "Kira, Lily, what are you doing here?" Ethan's voice betrayed a hint of fear, a recognition of the reckoning that stood before him. "We know, Ethan. We know everything." My voice was steady, belying the turmoil inside. "Know what? Kira, I can explain." Ethan's attempt at deflection was cut short by the evidence I presented, the final nails in the coffin of his deceit. The confrontation was intense, a cathartic release of months of pain and betrayal. Ethan's attempts to justify his actions fell on deaf ears, his words empty and devoid of the remorse we needed to hear. "You chose this path, Ethan. You chose to step outside our marriage, to break the trust that held our family together," I said, each word underscored by a conviction forged in the fires of betrayal. Lily's presence was a silent testament to the stakes of this confrontation. Her eyes, wide and watchful, bore witness to the crumbling facade of the father she had idolized. The realization of his loss seemed to finally dawn on Ethan, the understanding that there was no going back from the damage he had caused. "I'm sorry," he whispered, a plea for forgiveness that came too late. "Sorry doesn't undo the hurt, Ethan. It doesn't bring back the time you missed with Lily, the moments you chose to spend elsewhere." My voice broke, the weight of our collective pain bearing down on me. As we turned to leave, Ethan's voice, now laced with desperation, called out, "Kira, please, don't do this. We can still fix this." But it was over. The finality of our departure marked the end of our shared journey, a chapter closed on a marriage undermined by betrayal. In the days that followed, Lily and I leaned on each other, finding strength in our bond. The confrontation with Ethan had been a necessary closure, a way to reclaim our dignity and move forward, unburdened by the shadow of his actions. Our lives, though forever altered, began to find a new rhythm, a new normal. The pain of the past remained, a scar on our hearts, but it no longer defined us. We had faced the storm together, and in its aftermath, we found a resilience and a hope for the future that no betrayal could diminish. The aftermath of our confrontation with Ethan marked the beginning of a new chapter for Lily and me, one filled with hope, but shadowed by the remnants of past betrayals. We found solace in the embrace of my parents, who welcomed us into their home with open arms, their support a beacon of light in the lingering darkness. As we settled into our new life, the reality of our situation began to crystallize. Ethan, faced with the consequences of his actions, spiraled into a solitude of his own making. His career suffered, friendships waned, and his financial stability crumbled under the weight of alimony and child support payments mandated by the court. The social ostracism he experienced served as a stark reminder of the price of betrayal. One day, as Lily and I sat in the garden, basking in the tranquility of a life slowly piecing itself back together, she looked up at me with a question that had been lingering in her eyes for weeks. "Mom, do you think Dad will ever be part of our lives again?" I paused, considering the weight of her question. "Lily, your dad made some very big mistakes. It's up to him to make amends, to show that he's changed. But it's also okay for us to move forward, to find happiness without waiting for that to happen." Lily nodded, a maturity beyond her years settling over her features. "I just wish things could have been different," she whispered. "So do I, sweetheart, so do I," I replied, pulling her into a hug. The simplicity of the moment underscored the complexity of our journey, a journey of healing and rediscovery. The weeks turned into months, and as the seasons changed, so too did the narrative of our lives. I returned to work, embracing the challenges and satisfaction that came with my career. Lily thrived in school, her resilience a testament to her strength. Together, we navigated the waters of our new reality, finding joy in the simplicity of our daily routines. It was during this time of quiet reconstruction that I began to reflect on the journey we had undertaken. The pain, the betrayal, the fight for justice had all led us to this moment, a moment of tentative peace and cautious optimism. The struggle had not only been about revenge or holding Ethan accountable. It had been about reclaiming our lives, about ensuring that Lily grew up in a world where she felt loved, valued, and protected. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, the beauty of the moment felt like a balm to the scars we bore. "Mom, do you think we'll ever be able to forgive Dad?" Lily's question broke the silence, her voice tinged with curiosity and hope. I took a deep breath, considering her words. "Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, Lily. It's about letting go of the anger and hurt so it doesn't hold us back. Your dad has a lot of work to do, but maybe one day we'll be able to forgive him. For now, let's focus on us, on building the happiest life we can." Lily smiled, a reflection of the peace we had fought so hard to achieve. "I love you, Mom. I love you too, Lily. More than anything." As the sky turned from pink to deep blue, the stars beginning to twinkle in the twilight, I realized that our story was one of resilience, of the unbreakable bond between a mother and her daughter. Despite the turmoil, the heartache, and the battles we had faced, we emerged stronger, united by our journey from despair to empowerment. Our future was uncertain, filled with challenges and opportunities in equal measure. But one thing was clear. Whatever lay ahead, Lily and I would face it together, our love and strength a testament to the power of starting anew.